Hi, welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on AFR Talk, this Monday edition of Focal Point AFR Talk, looking at a piece right here during the news, Jan Schakowsky talking about what's at stake in the immigration debate. By the way, Marco Rubio is for women in combat. I don't know if you know that. He's come out for women in combat. He's perfectly happy to have your daughters sent to the front lines to die bullet-riddled the hands of the enemy. So Marco Rubio out for women in combat. He's also a part of the Amnesty 8, and the latest thing out of there that we need to understand is the plan that's being advocated by Marco Rubio and the other members of the Amnesty 8 would allow Janet Napolitano, the head of the Department of Homeland Security, to certify that the borders are secure. In other words, it wouldn't be, Rand Paul at least wants to have Congress vote on it. We're not going to go to legalization until Congress votes that the border is secure based on the reports from an inspector general, an independent source, not lackeys for the administration. So at least Rand Paul says, look, we're not going to do anything until Congress certifies that the border is secure. We're not going to have some subset, some southwestern governors or some group of hacks appointed by this administration make that decision for us. We're going to vote on it based on an independent information. And then Rand Paul's for amnesty. That's why I don't share that view that he does. I don't think we ought to go amnesty under any circumstances, secure border or not. But at any rate, the plan that Marco Rubio is advocating would allow Janet Napolitano to be the one that decided whether borders were secure enough for us to grant amnesty. She's already said the borders are more secure than they ever have been. She would certify a secure border tomorrow, and boom, then we have instant legalization. But Jan Schakowsky talking here about what really is at stake, and she says, look, she's a Democrat from Illinois. She says the immigration battle is important because it will have an enormous impact on the battle for power between the progressive and conservative forces in American society. If we are successful, in other words, if we can get the Amnesty 8 proposal done, the one that Marco Rubio is for, the one that John McCain is for, the one that Lindsey Graham is for, that's why it's a suicide pact. These guys it's like riding into the valley of death. These four Republicans, Jeff Flake, Arizona, Marco Rubio from Florida, guys that have been Tea Party favorites, they're leading us into the valley of death, the 600 right into the valley of death. John McCain, Lindsey Graham. Because Jan Schakowsky says, look, if we can do this, if we can get instant legalization for these 12 million illegals that are here, she says this, if we are successful, a gigantic block of progressive voters will enter the electorate over the next 15 years, a block that could be decisive in the battle for the future. So make no mistake, this is not about kindness for strangers. This is not about compassion for strangers. This is about political power. Don't let them lie to you. They're going to use that smokescreen. We got to be compassionate to these people. We have to be kind to them. We have to embrace them. We have to welcome them into our shores. It has nothing to do with that. And the Republicans are being completely deceived if they have a debate with the Democrats on that turf. You're not going to win that battle because they can out-compassion you every day of the week. They don't mean it. It's not about compassion. That's not what they're interested in. They're not interested in the welfare of illegal aliens. They are interested in consolidating political power. This is a naked power grab, pure and simple. Democrats know that 75% of Hispanic immigrants, now illegal aliens are not exclusively Hispanic, not exclusively from Mexico, but they're the predominant group. They know that 75% of them believe in big government. So if they ever do decide to become voting citizens, who are they going to vote for? They're going to vote for Democrats. And Jan Schakowsky says, man, we can lock this country up for decades if we can get these chump Republicans to go along with this amnesty proposal. We'll play them for suckers. We'll play them for saps. We'll use this compassion business, this embracing language. We'll fool evangelicals. You got a whole batch of evangelical leaders that have been hoodwinked by the same line of thinking. This is nothing but a naked political power ploy, and the Republicans are falling for it to their shame and to their embarrassment. Now, it's interesting. I got a piece that's sort of on a related subject because it deals with immigration from the London Telegraph. And this has to do really with two issues. It has to do with the immigration issue. It's a piece by a Jane Kelly. And what she does is she makes my case for immigration restrictions, and she makes my case in particular for restrictions on Muslim immigration. I've said for some time that I think we ought to stop immigration from Muslim nations. I've got two stories in the stack about Christians leaving Egypt, Christians fleeing Syria for their very lives. A lot of the Christians that are in Syria fled there from Iraq. And they went to Syria for safety. Now that's not a safe place because of devout Muslims. So they're fleeing to Lebanon. They're looking for some place to go. We ought to open our shores. If we're going to have a refugee program, let's open it. We're a Christian nation. In fact, don't forget our treaty with Great Britain. You know how it began? That ended the war for independence? In the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity. Those are the first words of our treaty with Great Britain that cemented our status as an independent sovereign nation in the name of the most holy and undivided Trinity. We are a Christian nation. If we're going to have a refugee plan, it ought to be to open our doors, our shores, to Christians who are fleeing from Islamic persecution in Muslim countries. Got a story in the stack today. I don't remember what country it's from. I think it's actually from Egypt. It's from Egypt, where a woman converted to Islam in order to get married. Her husband died. They have 7 children together. She converts back to Christianity in 2004. She's been convicted of a crime in Egypt, and she and all 7 of her children are now in prison for the crime of apostasy. That's Egypt. So if we're going to have a refugee plan, it ought to be to open our shores to Christians, not to Muslim refugees. They got 57 Muslim countries in the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, whatever that thing is, the OIC. Surely, if they're all about Islam being a religion of peace, then they ought to be able to find one of those 57 countries that can provide a harbor for Muslim refugees. Let Muslim nations provide refuge for Muslim refugees. Let a Christian nation like the United States provide refuge for Christian refugees. And I'm going to come back and finish up this story after the break, this Jane Kelly story. She lives in London in a place in West London called Acton Vale, V-A-L-E. She says, look, this place has become Acton Vale, V-E-I-L. She said, I grew up here. I moved here. This has become a place where I don't recognize it anymore. It's not the neighborhood it was when I moved here in 1996, just in 15 years. I feel like a stranger in my own home neighborhood, and she's leaving, she's fleeing because Acton Vale has turned into a Muslim enclave. And I'll go through some of the details with you, but she's making the case. This is what happens. Muslims are not interested, by and large, in assimilation. Some are, not all of them. But most of them want Islam, Muslim enclave, don't want to assimilate. Back in 2.